Good morning. Happy March. Can you believe it's March already? Yesterday was Christmas and tomorrow is Easter. It's the way it feels. I am the Reverend Connie Simon, and I am your interim minister and your worship associate today. So welcome to the River Road Unitarian Universalist congregation. If this is your first time here, we welcome you. If this is your first time back in a while, welcome home. For those watching live on YouTube, good morning. Hey, YouTube. Everybody wave and say hi to YouTube. YouTube. Feel free to join in the online chat with our host. If you're watching at a later date and you have questions, please feel free to visit our website or email me or any member of the staff to ask questions. Couple of announcements. We have a lot of announcements. I just have to tell you, every week we probably get a request for a dozen or more announcements. And we can't fit everything in, but I'm going to try to go really fast through some of these because they are important. All RE teachers are invited to today's teacher topic on creative inclusive classrooms in room 32 at 11:30. It is about time to think about the annual meeting. To be eligible to vote at the annual meeting, which happens in June, which is where you'll be selecting your new board of trustees, nominating committee, and search committee members. To be eligible to vote, you must be a member of the congregation who has made an identifiable pledge. So if you want to do that, that means that you need to be a member before April 1. Please contact me if that is something that you would like to do to be able to vote in the election. Also, coming up on March 9th, next Sunday, we have a gift for you. In these times when costs are rising and everything feels a little uncertain, our finance committee and financial stewardship committee and just some lovely members of the congregation have all come together with outside vendors to provide a seminar on managing your finances. So they'll talk about how to do giving, how to think about bequests and all of that stuff. This is not a pledge request. It's a gift for you to come and learn. That is next Sunday from 12:30 to 2:30. And the title is Building Financial Health and Legacy Through Every Stage, Tools and Resources to Help Us All Thrive. You can see more information on the schedule, how to participate, what you need to do in the e-weekly last week. Okay, that's a lot of things. There'll be more later. For details on these programs and all of our upcoming events, please visit our website at rruuc.org.
Sit at the welcome table. We're We begin our time together by lighting our chalice, the chosen symbol of our faith. Yesterday, our distant ancestors gathered around a flame to share their stories and find comfort. Tomorrow our descendants will gather around a flame, talking of a life we will never know. But today, it is we who gather here, around this flame, seeking, believing, and being together.
I'm not wearing my other microphone today. I forgot I have to come over here to say something to you. How about we sing this morning? Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able, and let's sing hymn 1026, If Every Woman in the World.
Today's prophetic voice is a strong woman. See if you can guess when she lived. She was ordained as a Universalist minister who preached about the power of love. She was married with 5 kids, traveled all over the United States, founded 11 UU congregations. You may think this is fairly modern, but she lived over 100 years ago. Today's prophetic voice is all about Eliza Tupper Wilkes. She was born in Maine in 1844, graduated from college in 1866, just after the Civil War. Very unusual for a woman. Her goal in education was to be a minister and start churches out in the West, bring religion to the people who were maybe perhaps struggling on the prairies. Even though she grew up Baptist, she switched to Universalism in around 1867 because she no longer believed in the hell and the damnation that was being preached in the Baptist church. One of her claims to fame is that she was ordained as one of the first female Universalist ministers. She was Universalist in 1871. She was one of a group of around 20 female ministers called the Iowa Sisterhood. They all had that same goal of going from place to place, trying to spread this word of love and care and hope. Few men wanted that job, and that's why it was a group of 20 women in the Iowa Sisterhood. Now, here's a map of all the places that Eliza lived in her life. I invite you to imagine what it must have been like for Eliza. As a woman, you're expected to take care of your home, take care of your kids, entertain guests, and maybe do a few things in the community. As someone living and traveling in the Midwest and West in the late 1800s, you may be traveling by train or by horse or by a horse-drawn something or other. There are markets and stores where you are, but not so many churches and not so many schools, and that's where Eliza was really focused. She married William Augustus Wilkes, who was a lawyer. He was extremely supportive of her gifts as a minister and her career as a minister. He arranged for housekeeping and childcare so that she could pursue her ministry. Also unusual for the time. Then they settled for a bit in the Sioux Falls, Minnesota area, and she became what they called circuit riders. That meant she would go from congregation or community to community preaching, and when she was done in that area, she would pass the torch to the next woman who came along to preach in that community. She, where am I? Her daughter was, she had one daughter and the rest sons. So her daughter really was noticing that there were a lot of women coming, that women were ministers. That was what she learned when she was growing up. Women are ministers. So when she saw one day that there was a man in the pulpit, she said, "Oh, look, Mama, there's a man up there. Can you believe it?" When her husband died, Eliza traveled to California to help found even more congregations and work on her other passion, the women's right to vote. She died in 1917, and her ashes were brought to Sioux Falls, where her husband was buried. To this day, she does not have a separately marked grave. Her name is not on the gravesite. Finally, though, in 1996, so about 80 years after she died, a historical marker was erected in her honor in Sioux Falls. Unfortunately, the marker doesn't say a whole lot about her ministry or her work founding congregations. It just talks about her home life and her civic and social duties as a woman. She believed that Unitarian and Universalist ideas were not that different, even before, well before, the Unitarians and Universalists merged. Her biggest message in her preaching was that of love. Here's a little excerpt of a sermon she's preached in California. It's called The Recreating Force of Love. Life has in it a recreating force. This force brings us the sweetest results. It can remove the scar and destroy every sign of injury. So it is that we can change our lives. Our destinies are in our hands. What we love is what we become. The greatest power is a loving power. But how can we know that great power? We only know it through the human touch of love. So Eliza Tupper Wilkes was preaching that message of love at the center of life those many years ago. So now children and their teachers are dismissed to their classes.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Moser, and I'm here to give you a testimonial about why I give to the stewardship drive. I've been pledging at River Road since 1995, when my husband and I and our two children moved here from the San Francisco area. And it wasn't our first UU church. In fact, it was our fifth. But it has been the longest and deepest connection to Unitarianism of my life. A lot has changed for me in those 30 years since I joined River Road. Our kids grew up and got married. My husband and I retired. Then he passed away, and I went through a period of serious health challenges. But through all these passages, River Road was here for me. A place where I knew I could live my values, a place where I would find like-minded people who supported me, a refuge really in a turbulent and uncertain world. River Road was also a place of spiritual growth for me. I was a lapsed Episcopalian and an art historian when I discovered Unitarianism through my husband, who was a biochemist and lawyer. He used to say that if Joseph Priestley, the scientist who discovered oxygen, was a Unitarian, then that was good enough for him. Priestley was not only, he was a Unitarian minister, so he was really a major science and spirituality nexus. But when we got to River Road, I really knew nothing about the long spiritual history of this denomination. And I remember the first time I joined a class at River Road about 10 years ago on spiritual development. At every session, it seems, I had an aha moment, learning about how the UU faith wove together mind and spirit, and how social action was part of that weaving. It was very exciting to me to know this congregation existed. Being in the nation's capital intensified the UU call to social action at River Road. I listened to people talk at coffee hour about their passions. I signed petitions, and I went to Capitol Hill to support environmental legislation. And I signed up for all these things that I kept growing with, women's groups, book groups, Common Read. It was an education to be here. My understanding about how life works kept evolving through my involvement with River Road and the people who make it happen. So I'm grateful beyond words for what River Road has given me over these years. I feel called now to protect its future so that other generations can benefit as I have. At times like these, it is particularly urgent that institutions like River Road, ones that encourage social justice and dialogue, are healthy and strong. That's why I pledge, and I hope you will too. Thank you.
Good morning. Charlotte, thank you so much for sharing all the things that River Road means to you. I'm Lisa Orange, and on behalf of the Stewardship Committee, I'd like to update you all on the first week of our annual campaign for River Road's operating fund. As of yesterday, members and friends have pledged $285,000, $285,823. That's a great start. Yeah. And we have a long way to go. All of us have something to give. So please, if you haven't yet pledged, make a gift that's meaningful to you, as together we strive to live out our values and care for one another. Looking ahead, we will celebrate the conclusion of the stewardship campaign on Sunday, which will be March 23rd. There will be ice cream, lots of ice cream. If you could volunteer to help with Sunday making, please let us know after the service. Also, sign up now for our financial wellness seminar, which is next Sunday, March 9th. We will have experts to discuss financial planning for families, smart giving, donor-advised funds, estate planning, wills and trusts, all of that. No matter what stage of your financial life cycle you're currently in, there's something here for you. So look for the link in the e-weekly or stop by and talk to one of us in the fellowship hall after the service. Thanks.
It's that time again, that time when we call to mind the joys and the sorrows that have been on our hearts and minds over the last week. And I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of them on my heart and on my mind this week. As this world continues to surprise me, that's the only word I can come up with. Just when I think I've seen the worst of it, just when I think maybe we're going to turn a corner into some kind of normalcy or return to something familiar, we don't. And I wonder, what am I to do with this? And that's when I think about all those small moments of joy that I've experienced over the week. And even someone asking me, is it okay that I feel good right now? It is okay. I promise it's okay. These joys and sorrows are the cycles of our life. We have to allow our joy to creep in because we're human, right? And these are things that make us happy, and because, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, joy is an amazing form of resistance. So we're going to change around the way we've been doing this part of the service just a little bit. I want to give you the opportunity to speak out the name of a joy or a sorrow that's on your hearts, after which I'll offer a prayer. So while Cliff's playing lightly, just call out the name of a joy or a sorrow or something that's on your heart. You may also choose to come up and light a candle at any time during the service or during the offertory for your joy or your sorrow. But for this morning's prayer, I chose a prayer for our country by Reverend Kristen Green. We pray for our country's leaders. May they lead with justice and fairness on their lips. May they hold in highest esteem the value of human life and liberty. May they never forget those who elected them, nor those who did not. Many of us are worried, anxious, and afraid? Who will uphold our basic human rights? Who will protect us from rollbacks on liberties? Who will lead us through the shadows? Who will remember us? Spirit of life and love, holy presence all around, embrace us with your wisdom and peace. Surround us with reassurance, fill our hearts with purpose, and empower us to do what is right. May our hearts be expanded as the time comes for us to comfort each other. May our minds be charged with creativity as we find our way forward. May our bodies remain well so that we can travel to our state capitals or the line at the abortion clinic to escort someone to safety. May our spirits be guided by our values. May our lives speak, be they gentle and angry or loud and clear. May we remain united in our mission as people of faith to grow deeply, to grow together, and to serve one another. Blessed be, may it be so. Amen. For those we have named, for those whose names we do not know, and for those names that are carefully guarded in our hearts, let us now pause for a moment of silent meditation, reflection, and prayer, after which we will sing Amazing Grace. In support of our congregation and the community beyond, the morning offering will be gratefully received. We do so mindful of the fact that we draw water from wells we did not dig, pick fruit from trees we did not plant, and that this is as it should be so long as we dig and plant for those who come after. If this is your first time visiting, please feel free to let the bowl pass you by. Your presence is your gift to us. To learn more about our programming and all the ways you can connect to the mission of this congregation, please visit our website at RRUUC. You can also give there by clicking the blue Give Online button. If you would prefer to give by text, that number is 73256. Type in RRUUC and the amount you'd like to give. Thank you all for sharing your time, your talent, and your treasures. Our reading this morning is by Glennon Doyle and comes from an Instagram video that she posted on harnessing our anger from 5 years ago that is still pretty relevant. Question: I'm really struggling with my anger lately. I just feel angry all the time. What's wrong with me? There is nothing wrong with you because you are angry. Anger is a normal human instructional emotion, just like joy. It's just that we as women, just like every marginalized group, are trained and tamed to be ashamed of our anger. It's important for every single marginalized group to be trained and told over and over again that if they're angry, that means there's something wrong with them. Why would power structures want marginalized groups to believe that their anger is something to be ashamed of? Because people who do not struggle with their anger, but instead embrace and harness their anger, are people who demand change. The only people who have ever changed the world were people who were pissed off and who stopped trying to manage their anger or fix their anger or struggle with their anger and instead embraced their anger, harnessed their anger with other angry people, and unleashed it in creative ways to make change. What if, instead of struggling with our anger, we consider that when we feel angry inside, maybe it doesn't mean there's something wrong with us? Maybe it means there's something wrong period. Not wrong with us, wrong out there, something that we might be able to help change. Women from time immemorial have been gaslit by the entire world. Every time we felt angry, somebody tells us we're crazy. The truth is that angry women are not broken. We are just some of the only people who are responding appropriately to a broken world. Most of my activism in this world is done because I have trusted my anger. Because when I get pissed off, I just assume that there's something to be pissed off about. And I find other pissed off women, and we pull together our genius and our talent and our resources and our energy, and we unleash it. The really cool thing about anger is that when you use it out there, it disappears for a while. When you stop swallowing it over and over again and studying it and trying not to be it and feeling ashamed of it and not speaking your truth, when you use it, it's fuel. It burns up, and then you just settle back down until you get pissed off again. I was going to do a sermon today entitled Badass Women, but I've decided to save that one for next year, for International Women's Day next year, which, if you haven't realized, is March 8th. I still want to talk about badass women, though, but some different ones. I want to keep in theme with Beth's prophetic voices and talk about that particular group of women ministers who, beginning in the late 1880s, changed the rules of ministry only to fade into history and be largely forgotten until their accomplishments were rediscovered and brought to light by the publication more than 20 years ago of this book by Cynthia Grant Tucker, entitled The Prophetic Sisterhood, Women of the Liberal Frontier. It felt really important to switch to this sermon today because Cynthia Grant Tucker just passed away. And as this is one of my favorite books, I wanted to honor her. So who were these women, and how is it that their female voices, typically silenced in society, came to be heard? First, there was the growth of liberal religion. Our Universalist ancestors, believing in salvation for all, were more welcome of women generally and less structured in their organization, making room for the participation of women. Unitarians, on the other hand, ever intellectual and cerebral, reinterpreted traditional Christianity to, quote, absolve Eve of having corrupted the human race. So in their own way, I guess they also created space for female participation in religious practice. Second, the United States was fulfilling its so-called manifest destiny to settle the West. The 1800s saw the Louisiana Purchase, the forced displacement of indigenous peoples from their land, the California Gold Rush, and the Homestead Act, which offered 160 acres of unoccupied land to anyone willing to settle there, improve the land, and stay 5 years. Transcontinental railroad and telegraph systems became a reality. In 100 years, the population of the U.S. grew from 5 to 76 million. Among those settling in the New West were liberal Christians, mostly Universalist, but a few Unitarians as well. Add to this the impact of the Civil War and the loss of thousands of men. The result is that in this new Western frontier, women were doing all kinds of jobs they'd never been able to do back east or in a society with a larger male population. All of a sudden, women were becoming doctors and lawyers and dentists and ministers. In 1870, there were 600 liberal Christian ministers, which is what Unitarians and Universalists considered themselves as. 5 of them were women. 20 years later, in 1890, there were 70 of us. These women were something special. Largely rejected by the establishment and Harvard, which was at the time the preeminent place for theological education, these women mentored and encouraged and supported one another as they planted new churches throughout the heartland. They didn't try to be like their male counterparts. Instead, they did ministry a whole new way. These women, Mary Augusta Safford, Eleanor Elizabeth Gordon, Florence Buck, and Mary Leggett, just to name a few, saw ministry as an extension of their domestic role. Many were unmarried, or more accurately, probably were married to their careers. Few of them, other than Eliza Tupper Wilkes, had children. They preached equality and responsibility to family. They saw themselves as educators and sought to make the church a place of learning not just on Sundays, but throughout the week. They created unity clubs, what we today call small group ministries, where people could come to discuss the issues of the day. They supported women's clubs that encouraged women to aim higher than domestic chores, teaching them about money management and economic empowerment. Looking beyond the walls of the church, these clubs became part-time social work schools. For the sisterhood, ministry was about teaching practical Christianity, work in the real world. But the actual church home was important too. Home was praised as a holy space. The church should reflect that as well. These women ministers recognized the church's responsibility to the whole of society and believed that the physical church building, regardless of its architectural style, should be functional and inviting to the community. For example, the Kalamazoo, Michigan church even had a gym for female members and attendees to use because stronger women meant stronger families. Author Tucker says it was all about bridging the private and public realms of religious expression and making the prophetic message accessible. The best part, they rarely incurred debt. They would save for every new church building rather than borrow. They had no mortgages. Now, their relationship with the denomination wasn't that good. The American Unitarian Association was not particularly fond of these Western liberals in general, and definitely not these outspoken females. AUA President Samuel Eliot tried to freeze them out by withholding funding and making petty reporting demands while refusing to send out field officers to support the Western churches. But the sisters didn't care. They just found new ways to get things done. Mary Augusta Safford created an endowment fund upon which all of their churches could borrow and draw to support their congregations. And as a result, the AUA strategy backfired, as these women proved themselves way better with money than the male-dominated denominational office. So if they were so successful, what happened to them, Reverend Connie? Well, times changed. There was a great internal transformation of liberal religion in the late 1800s that could be the topic of 2 or 3 sermons. Basically, liberals in the East and the West had significantly different theological views. Did they consider themselves Christians anymore? Could the more traditional theists and the radical ethical-based liberals remain united? Was this just an issue of polity, whereby each congregation would decide for itself how to define God, religion, and Christianity? Quick answer, they reached a compromise. But it hurt the ministers of the sisterhood as they dealt with congregations that had been divided by the dispute. Some of them didn't agree with the compromise. Men who had previously been willing to listen to a female minister protested by not coming to church anymore. Also, in the early 1900s, society as a whole became manlier, as women were steered back toward homemaking. Many women and some men left the clergy altogether and turned towards social work. The saddest part was that these devoted, talented, and faithful women were alienated and many left behind. Some of the sisterhood did turn to social work. Some went from parish ministry to establish settlement houses, institutions that provided the urban poor and European immigrants with skills training, health care, child care, and employment assistance. Celia Parker Woolley opened the Frederick Douglass Center in Chicago and was instrumental in the founding of the Urban League and the NAACP. Some of the sisters shifted to the suffrage movement. Carolyn Julia Bartlett Crane became a civil engineer working to improve public sanitation, water supply, and meat and food processing. She considered herself to be a minister to municipalities dedicated to using science to stimulate ethics and urban reform as the best way to teach liberal religion. These women led incredible lives, yet many of them died alone, broke and forgotten. Carolyn Tucker Grant's book on their lives truly is amazing, and I highly recommend it. The story of the sisterhood is an example of perseverance and persistence, something we need right now. They found a way when those in power sought to ignore them and devalue their ministries, but these women persisted. They did so much for allowing the voice of women to be heard in ministry. Their story begs the question, who will be the next new voice in Unitarian Universalism? Over the last century, we've seen the doors of ministry open to welcome people of diverse ethnicities, cultures, and sexual and gender identities. This is a good thing. Not only do we need to hear new voices speaking, we need to hear them speaking in new ways. The Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life reported about 10 or 15 years ago, I think, that 1 in 6 people around the globe, that's 1.1 billion people at that time, had no religious affiliation. This makes the unaffiliated the third largest group worldwide, behind Christians and Muslims, and about equal in size to the world's Catholic population. That number has increased. There are more people today who declare themselves to be unaffiliated. And among those, it's also helpful to look at people's relationship to organized religion. Faith Formation 2020 identified 4 levels of religious engagement. On one end of the spectrum were those who had vibrant faith and active engagement in a congregation, who are participating but uncommitted. So those were the two groups. The former group represented the traditional churchgoer, the believer who comes every week, participates fully, and maybe even serves in a leadership role. While the latter group of participating but uncommitted might attend some church activities, but they aren't really that engaged in the community. Church for them is more about social and utilitarian needs rather than spirituality. We also have those that claim they are spiritual but not religious. Many of these people are in our congregation right now in this moment. Trying to convert them into being vibrant faith, active engagement people isn't going to work. We run the risk of driving them away altogether. For this group, maybe it's not a question of repackaging the existing church to make it appealing to them, but about creating something new. And then we have this group, the 4th group, which are the unaffiliated and uninterested. This group has no need for spirituality and no need for organized religion. And for them, they might be fulfilling their itch through other types of engagement, such as soup kitchens, missions, volunteerism, or just direct social justice action that is not connected to a faith institution. Who will speak to these new groups? How will the congregations manage in this new world? Anybody who tells you that they know the answer is naive. I don't think there is one answer. Some would tell you that the days of 10 a.m. worship are gone, or they'll point to the success of the Church of the Larger Fellowship in Unitarian Universalism as proof that we don't need brick and mortar buildings anymore. They'll tell you that Unitarian Universalism is no longer a religion or a denomination, that it's a social justice movement. There is some truth to that, but I, for one, am not ready to give up on traditional buildings and congregations. Years ago, former UUA President Peter Morales said that congregations will always be at the center of Unitarian Universalism, but they cannot be the only way we connect with people. Little did we know that just a couple years later, a global pandemic would force us to reimagine how we connect and how we do church. And even today, as we recover from that pandemic, here's the deal. The world is still changing around us rapidly. Technology, everything, it's just continuous. Just as it did in the 1880s when the sisterhood grew into existence. We're in a period of phenomenal change, a phenomenal risk, and our message is needed more than ever. To make that happen, we as Unitarian Universalists need to find new ways to connect. We need to rethink how we do things, how we gather, who we work with, and how we do that work. We need more opportunities for small groups that can happen in places other than Sunday morning service, in homes, in coffee shops, on college campuses, in addition to Zoom and Twitch and Instagram or WhatsApp or any of those places. The sisterhood showed us new and creative ways of doing ministry. And honestly, I think some of their ideas would work well today. They weren't afraid to speak up and speak out, to take their religion into the real world. Nor should we be. We can meet people where they are and help them find their own personal truth. We can help them identify the type and level of engagement that's right for them, whether that's participating in protests, helping at a food pantry, or doing one-on-one virtual tutoring, or something else entirely. We can work together to create and implement new ideas and programs that address the needs of our communities and our larger society. Look at some of the amazing things that we are doing now. The activities that happen in this congregation, the things that are happening in the DMV area, the protest groups, Side with Love, the Church of the Larger Fellowship, Worthy Now. There are so many programs, each of which is reminiscent of programs operated by the Iowa Sisterhood. Each of them is doing something different and speaking out in new ways to bring us together in community and to do good work for our larger society. There are lessons to be learned from the imagination, the courage, the innovation, and the determination of the sisterhood. Through Tucker's book, they are speaking to us from our past and offering many lessons. All we have to do is listen. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing. We're going to sing a song dedicated to those women of the Iowa Sisterhood. We're going to sing Come and Go With Me, hymn 1018. I love Cliff. Have a seat. I know, right? Come and go with me to that land where there will be freedom and justice and peace and singing. Those are the values that we honor here every week. And those are the values that you are invited to live every week. And you can do that through these things. If you would like to become more well-versed in the language of inclusion and welcoming of transgender people in this congregation, the next cohort of transgender welcoming in congregation starts on March 12th. Contact Beth Irakura if you'd like to sign up for that. We are also beginning our work with Shelter Week. You can donate whatever you want. This is our 37th year sponsoring Shelter Week at River Road. From Sunday, March 30th through Friday, April 4th, we'll provide food and supplies to one of 2 Interfaith Works women's shelters. Find the donation slot to fit your time and budget on our Sign Up Genius, which is accessible via the Shelter Week website page. If you would like to contribute, that's the word I want, to the spiritual growth of this congregation, I invite you to consider offering or participating in worship. You may want to share a reflection or perhaps do a lay-led service over the summer or next fall. If you're interested in that, please let me know. And with that, let us extinguish our chalice with the words that we speak together. They'll be on the screen by Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. My friends, I wish you love and peace and joy and persistence and perseverance and a good dose of anger and pissed-offedness. Go in peace.